to welcome a guy I've become friends with over the last few years and was a big fan of him as a player, Lawrence Jackson. Lawrence, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Jacob. Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start with how most people know you in the city of Los Angeles for your playing days at USC. What was that always in the thought process to go from Inglewood High up to USC?
No, not even close. For me, living in LA and growing up in the 90s and experiencing a lot of the, gang violence and the hip hop generation, it was really an opportunity to get out. And I looked at Miami, I looked at Tennessee, I looked at Oregon, University of Washington, and it was pretty much set to go to University of Washington because Bobby Kennedy had recruited my brother to Arizona and had gone to UW, but Neuheisel got fired. And just in that whole transition prior to him getting fired, USC started having more intentional conversations, and I let them know, like, I'm interested. You guys are in my backyard, but how can I have UW, a couple of states up, recruiting me harder than the school in my backyard? And that really opened up the door for them to show me that they really wanted me to go to the school. But my father actually was against me going to USC and signing a letter of intent. And it took a lot of convincing. I would say it's probably my first business pitch, letting him know that, why I thought I, would succeed at USC. And it really wasn't until Coach Randy Shannon from the University of Miami, way on the other side of the country, talked about the similarities and why I would want to go to USC and stay on the West Coast. And, that was enough to get my dad to relent. But I didn't grow up a diehard college football fan. So a lot of the SC history and tradition was very new to me when I got there. And, just hearing about it once I started getting recruited. But prior to that, USC hadn't been, much anything the past 10, 15 years. So nobody really talked about them. So I didn't know. But once I decided to stay home, it was less about the opportunity to play at SC, but uh, in my trip to Tennessee, seeing how far it was, I would never want my mom to have to travel that far to see me play, or the people who played a role in supporting me in high school, friends, family, classmates, different things like that. Being able not only to go to practice when Pete had it open, come to games and watching on TV every Saturday. If I had gone to the University of Miami, who knew how many times, the community would see me play. So it didn't start off as SC, but as I learned more about what you can get out of sports, it became clear that, USC was the school to go to, especially if I wanted to stay in LA post football.
So you talked about the close proximity, so that obviously was an advantage of USC. But what other things? How was the experience for you as a person and also as a player going there?
Going there as a person, it was one of the best experiences of my life. It really opened my eyes to interacting with different races and nationalities. And coming from Inglewood, the only time I really got to interact with white people were opponents, referees, or teachers. Never really had any conversations, never sat, next to a white person, never, had a meal with a white person like that. And when I got into college, there's a lot of social stereotypes that I saw that started to fade by me testing out those truths, right? The vast pool of information and experience and culture. Uh, if you just even talk about music, it opens up your whole realm. But I was completely culture shocked when I went to SC and had to acclimate not only socially outside of being around the football team, but also in the classroom. I had to drop several classes. One was a geography class just because I couldn't handle, creating maps on a computer. I never seen anything like that. And I wanted to start off in psychology and took the weed out class and it weighed me out. Wasn't able to handle that with all the other reading from the classes and football on top of that. So it took me a while to get used to it. And USC, they have an educational psychology class that teaches you how to learn. And without that class, I would never have done as well as I did in college. It really put me on the right path academically. And a lot of the older guys, once you get into that locker room where you actually have mixed races, you really get to see how natural you are in the real world and that, the school environment. And I think that did more for me than anything, especially being that I was in LA, right? So to live in Inglewood and have an idea of LA from a disadvantaged perspective, and then to go 12 to 15 minutes away and be in class with people with amazing, experience that I can learn from was just insane.
And then what about as a player? Obviously, you said, when you're growing up, the football program was on had some hard times, and you were a big part of when USC went through that resurgence under Pete Carroll.
Yeah, that was an interesting time. 2001, of course, when he got hired, or the first season, it didn't start off well, and it really didn't end well. With the bowl game, there were a couple of wins in there that I guess fans can be proud of, but the fact that Coach Carroll wasn't, very much the fan favorite coming in. A couple of other people didn't get the job that everybody wanted, and understanding the nature of our program, seeing him lose the bowl game, but being able to go to practice every day because it's 10 minutes away. And Sean Cody was hurt, recovering from the ACL. So I had a chance to really talk to him and get an idea of what Coach Carroll was building. Now, I committed prior to the 2002 season starting. And so having committed then with traditional, fans only knowing the Vegas Bowl as the last game, and they're like, oh, you could go anywhere in the country. Why would you go, to USC? And I would say in a matter of 2 or 3 months, it went from why would you go there to are you sure you're going to be able to play there? And so what Coach Carroll did was give guys a chance to compete. An individual like myself coming from Inglewood and seeing the game as a chance to reset your family legacy and create new opportunities generationally. um it 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 just it made it easy to not only absorb the academic side of it, but if they would say, if you want to be a legend and you want to be remembered, there's no place better to be a great football player than at SC, right? SC football, if you're a great player, you'll live among, the great athletes of all time. And we talked a lot about building, right? You have a lot of people who want to come in when the championships are rolling. If I wanted to do that, I could have went to, Oregon, where they were in the Rose Bowl and different things like that. But I saw a chance to be great, and I saw a chance to restore a program. And a lot of the guys, we took that opportunity on ourselves, especially the '03 class, to really put the program over the top. And it did tremendous things to us, just overall character development, life skills, cohesion, unity, brotherhood, different things like that that we'll remember for the rest of our lives.
And then let's talk a little bit more about your individual career there. A little hampered by injuries, and just walk through that kind of experience. Beyond the successes you had, what else kind of happened to you as personally in your career there?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that, they wanted me to gray shirt probably June or July. They asked me about gray shirting. I hurt my ankle pretty bad. The doctor said it would have been better had I broken it. And I was all set with Dr. Thorderson at USC Keck School of Medicine to get a screw put in my ankle, a
By the way,
syndesmosis.
just so you know, I've had some foot issues in the last year and a half, and that's the doctor that I've seen.
Perfect. So you know how awesome he is. And, I was with my mom and we were at the hospital for surgery prep. And Thordarson said, let me check one more thing. And he put on these thick black gloves and he's like, this isn't going to feel good. And he twisted my ankle and held it. And so they could do the x-ray. And what he determined was that I had just a natural gap in my ankles and I didn't need the surgery. And I didn't need the screw. But what happened from the injury, I pretty much tore all of the ligaments, all of the muscles. So I had tons of scar tissue and I didn't want a gray shirt. And so I had to practice. I cheated the clearance test, all of that stuff. And it was just a horrible, horrible, horrible first year for me. I called my mom wanting to quit every day. Russ had to talk me out of it. And I finally saw the opportunity, being hurt and also having to be on the service team going against Jacob Rogers and Winston Justice and, Deuce Latulia and the likes. I saw it as an opportunity to get better for the rest of my career, right? So um, one year, not physically, my best. Players tease me. My own roommate, Cedric Ellis, he was like, yeah, bro, I thought you were garbage. You came in ranked, super high and then you didn't do anything. They thought I was a bust. And I said, wait till I get healthy, and everything changed from there. They start to see what they recruited. And it was tough that first year, not only overcoming injury, but getting acclimated to college. Um, and then also understanding that I wasn't going to be the athlete that I was in high school, anymore. Like those days were long gone. If you saw me play in high school, you knew that I was only 90%, 85% of what I was in high school and college. So it was very difficult. I had two surgeries while I was there, and just really a difficult time finding my focus in 2006. The game before Oregon, we played Stanford, and the week before we played them, and Christo Bruce from Washington State got 5 sacks. And so that's week 7. I want to say week 7. And I hadn't had a sack that, up until that point, I had 10 sacks the year before. And so after the game, I found out my cousin passed away. And so I was upset that I didn't get any sacks, wasn't celebrating in a team win. Then I got hit with the hard news of my cousin, who really inspired me, to play football in many ways, had passed away. And it was just a tough week for me. And I think that's where Coach Carroll and I got really close. He introduced me to the inner game of tennis. And I thought it was corny. Like, why would coach give me a book? I told my cousin died and I'm all messed up. It was a night game, Oregon, and at the Coliseum. And I took the book with me to the hotel. And, after a 4 o'clock walkthrough, I was like, let me read this. I didn't want to go to sleep. And I couldn't put it down. It absolutely changed my life. Went out and had my first 3 sacks of the season. The next week I had a sack and a forced fumble. And the mindset shift that happened while I was there and dealing with the injury is what really set me up long term in life. And I never thought that, as much as on paper I would have a good career and a great career at SC, that I would equally have as many, hardships that weren't visible to, the public eye.
Um, it's interesting that that book has kind of become synonymous with Coach Carroll. That was always the one that he's espoused, and it's awesome that it had that kind of impact on you. So out of USC, draft comes up, and you were projected to be a first rounder, fell towards the bottom of the first round. Just talk about that experience and then talk about ending up with the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, it's a lot of people don't understand how stressful the draft process is. It's one thing when you're not a top player, But when preseason, you're on Lindy's All-American and, Phil Steele and all of these different things, you have a lot of spotlight on you and a lot of attention. And I could have, people wanted me to leave in 2005, but I knew I wasn't nearly close to being ready. '06, I got hurt, bounced back in '07. And with that, I carried a lot of um, doubt from the outside on what I could do. Was I who I was in '05, or who I was in '06? And so '07 came around, and it was important to me coming from Inglewood, having been a disadvantaged, student athlete in high school, and understanding that I made it out, but a lot of other people could have made it out if we had better resources and better opportunity. I saw it better and more sustainable long-term development wise to focus on football my last year after graduating, to have the goal of being a first round pick. I knew that I could always go back to school and get a PhD or a master's, but I only had one moment to be a first round pick. And the kids that I'm trying to help and the kids that I'm trying to say, it's important that you've hit that marker of success. As kids, we see the ESPN cover, Sports Illustrated, the lottery picks, NBA, the shoe contracts, all of this stuff. And we associate the success with first round, the elite of the elite. And so it was important for me to get there. And when the draft came around, I was actually disappointed having, taken trips to Tampa Bay, Detroit, even, talking with Seattle. Dwayne Board, the D-line coach, told me honestly at the combine, hey, if you're there, we're going to take you. Like, we really like you. And so I didn't think it, serious. And they picked number 25 that year and swapped with the Cowboys. And so once they made that trade, I got the call. My agent let me know everything was going on. We hopped on a call, but I was very disappointed, not only because I had fallen, to number 28, but the team that I went to felt that they could trade back, 3 slots to get me. So even though there were 3, 4 teams in between that, I just felt there were a lot of teams who passed up on me. And as much as I wanted to have a chip on my shoulder, I didn't let that happen because only one team needs to fall in love with you. And so getting drafted, that's something that will last, forever. It's one thing to say you got drafted, and it's another thing for people to say first round draft pick, right? That's an incredible feat. And for me as an individual, I didn't luck into that. I didn't just, oh, I got drafted. I set out intentionally as a fifth grader, knowing that this was my path and my vision. And I was laughed at early on and people doubted it. But my grandma will tell you, you're one, and she taught at Whitworth Elementary where a lot of my peers went. And she said, you're the one student who said that they wanted to be an athlete and they actually did it. She was the one who laughed, one of the first people to laugh and said, oh, you better figure out something else. Because as a teacher in Inglewood, she'd heard hundreds and thousands of kids say they wanted to play professional sports. So here her grandson, saying, I want to play pro sports. She's like, no, 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 no. And so uh, just having a lifelong, you know, academia oriented grandmother who instilled that, but to have the opportunity to get drafted from the combination of athletics and academics, who I am intellectually, that is what I sought after, to create change in the community and wanting to bring it back. And I'm fortunate enough to have played 5 years and, be in Seattle, a city that I love, great air, great atmosphere, great people. It's a place that I'll, frequent for the rest of my life and that I'll consider home, especially with me being an asthmatic and the air and having wanting to go there out of high school to UW. It really was humbling for it to come full circle, but to be in Washington and Seattle as a professional. But uh, getting drafted is a journey. It was very difficult on one hand, challenging, but not hard because I, genetically blessed with the prototypical frame. And my job was not to mess it up. And not messing it up was the impetus to focusing on being able to go back and help kids like myself, um, get an opportunity to make it out, whether it's mentorship, guidance, even a little speech or a conversation at a banquet can really change a kid's life.
Yeah, why don't we shift a little bit to focusing on what it was like growing up in Inglewood, and also, tying it a little bit into with WSA's mission and helping give people opportunities, give kids in the inner city in Southern California the opportunity to participate in sports. How big an impact, obviously you were able to reach the highest level of football, and just the opportunities that sports afforded you.
Yes, matter of fact, sports saves lives. That I have a bunch of friends who are not in the best situation that they would want to be in, but they're alive, right? We have friends who are not alive, that we play with, who weren't able to break, 100% free of it. And a lot of it happens due to the lack of resources, right? We don't have, you start with our coaches. These are coaches who they themselves had an opportunity, but, wasn't invested in. So they see the next generation, but they get a $1,000 stipend for the whole season. What can a high school football coach do with the $1,000 stipend, right? And as kids, growing up, you don't understand what you don't have because you don't see what it is to have. We grew up playing, street football, light pole to light pole, sideline pop. You'd be lucky to land on the grass and not on the sidewalk on the concrete. But it was for us as kids, being outside was the one thing that we had. Playing together was what we had. Basketball, football, three flags up. That develops your sense of self. You learn situations like, your own home. And I learned through, that I was much better, athletically than, my peers in many instances, not as much so in basketball. I was awful at basketball, but where I was awful in basketball, I was great in football. And I told my mom that I wanted to play football. And she signed me up for Inglewood Pop Warner. And I only was able to play 1 year, but Trevor Ariza was my quarterback. And so seeing him go on to the NBA and win championships and things like that, and I was the center, it's a great example of what can happen, with sports, where you take a center and a quarterback, one makes it to the NFL and one makes it to the NBA. He went to Westchester and I went to Inglewood. We embody, in my opinion, some of the success stories. And when you look at guys like Marcellus Wiley, who's doing this thing on Sports Nation, you
No,
see,
not Sports Nation. He's with us now. He's
yeah,
with us.
yeah. Speak for yourself. Speak for
There we
yourself.
go.
I'm
There we
moving. Yeah. I'm moving way too fast.
go.
And I love, how the freedom that he has on, speak for yourself, to really speak for himself and show everybody what an inner city kid can do once he gets a chance to go to a Columbia. Marcellus is my mentor, has been my mentor since high school. So for me, coming out of the inner city, and my first camp that I went to was a Curtis Conway camp at Morningside High School, completely free, right? And so a lot of the legends that came out before me, whether it's Curtis Conway, um, Marcellus Wiley, you have guys after me, Deshaun Jackson, tons of guys who went through the Inglewood system. And to see it not have the resources completely needed. And a lot of this was prior to the NFL coming in. We're having some growth opportunities or whatnot there, but to have glass on the practice field, to have potholes on the practice field, to not be able to practice at night because you don't have practice field lights, those are things that limit opportunity. And for me, we have to be honest and recognize that our public schools aren't the greatest. And so if our public schools are getting, attacked with budget cuts and even physical education and arts, right? I feel that it's so un-American to have elite sports on one end and to have a guy like LeBron James having been homeless and slept in his car, right? We know that our young minority men are getting killed by each other, going to jail, committing crimes, right? Is the cost to let them participate in sports fully not cheaper than the 2+ billion that we're paying, for incarceration? It costs more in California to pay for an inmate than it does to put a student through an entire year at Harvard. And to think that one inmate, that 68 plus thousand, $70,000, if you take that one inmate's cost per year and put that into 7 schools, that's more than some of these schools they've ever seen, right? And so for me, understanding that, yeah, if we like to see sports at the top end, right? Russell Westbrook went to Lusinger. James Harden went to Fairfax. These guys have nonprofits. They put things back into their schools, but it's a collective effort. If we care about the impact that sports has on society, and if we love the athletes that we love, we need to understand that for every one LeBron James, you're losing 10. For every one Russell Westbrook, you're losing 10. For every, Lawrence Jackson, you're losing 10, right? And so we're passionate about coming back and letting kids know it's not just about the money, it's not just about the fame, but you have a chance to redirect your entire generation with a degree. And for me, that was the biggest thing. I have a degree from USC for the rest of my life. That's powerful.
Walk us through now that the football playing career is over, some of the stuff you're doing and what you're up to right now.
So a lot of what I'm doing is focused on leveraging my sociology degree and my philosophy minor. I took it very personal when people talked about sociology as basket weaving and whatnot, but it really was an opportunity for me to get formally trained at a prestigious university as to the issues plaguing the community. And philosophy taught me a lot about character, ethics, values, principles, things like that. Over the past 8 years, I've committed to breaking the cycle of poverty in Black America and using that as a model for other communities using the curb cut effect. And a lot of that has to do with focusing on community capacity building and leveraging not only sports, but opportunities for growth and development within sports and outside of sports like STEM, but also focusing on creating for Inglewood through Inglewood Active Communities, which I've been recently named chair, to create an environment that fosters health. With the American Heart Association, we know health starts with equity, right? And for as much conversation as we have about police brutality, food deserts, the gaps in education, the gaps in PE access, the gaps in sports access, the gap in access to proper play space, where we have per capita among some of the lowest, park spaces in LA. When you go to a Marina Del Rey, they have far more park space per person than in Inglewood. So working on maximizing community health, community wellness, community capacity building, focusing intentionally on the K through 12 demographic with youth disconnection, where my focus is on keeping youth connected, where studies show that if you're able to keep youth connected and not experience youth disconnection, they have a chance to earn up to $31,000 more per year, like 45% more likely to own a home, different things like that. And through Inglewood Active Communities Coalition, through my position as chair at US as BAAYP, Black Alumni Association Young Professionals Group, it allows me an opportunity to really get into the community, to really support sports and academics. And the core project that we have, it focuses on restoring the neurological function based off of the impact of poverty and how it rewrites the architecture of the brain. And so we're using sports as a pathway to improving literacy, improving behavioral outcomes, increasing test scores, increasing all academic performance across the board, as well as the opportunity to decrease exposures to acute and catastrophic injury, concussions, ACL tears, things like that. So we're looking to put into the inner cities or the inner cities and disadvantaged communities platform of technology and development that not only supports and enhances the athlete, but the student athlete, and also provides a platform to making up lost ground with the physical education budget cuts, where now you're able to give a school access to intelligent training that incorporates both movement and the brain, which is tremendously advantageous in our situation.
One very fascinating thing I think that people would be surprising, and I think it just documents that you don't just talk the talk, but you walk the walk. The fact you still live in Inglewood. Talk about the decision to, you live anywhere you want in Southern California, your first round draft pick. Why do you live where you grew up?
I thought that was the most important thing for me to establish, is that when you make it, you don't make it to leave your community behind. You don't make it to come back to your community in a fancy car with fancy jewelry, right? I believe entrepreneurship is among the most critical things that any community can do for self-sustainability. And so, in wanting to commit to my high school, commit to my city, moving back allowed me to be available, not only to open up businesses and invest in entrepreneurs and develop skills, but to participate with the high schools, the middle schools, with Inglewood Active now online, with the NFL having come in. It's a great opportunity for me to dedicate my work in Inglewood, but too many athletes and entertainers get money and leave their neighborhoods behind. I feel like, I ride an elliptical bike. So it's an elliptical that's a bike, no seat. And even just that, my community, fellow community members seeing a different type of bike, seeing me ride an electric skateboard, the supporting working out, different things like that plays a role. I can't tell you how many underfunded entrepreneurs are in this neighborhood that, and me not being able to provide the funding that I want to provide, the skills, that they need goes, a long way. But it's about being home and letting people know that it's not about the money, it's about solutions, and it's about being the change that you want to see in the world. I can go talk about stuff, I can go tweet, I can do all of that. But coming from, I lived in, El Segundo for a little bit, just the drop in access to healthy foods, it's tremendous. Not having access to the same, I have to drive to El Segundo Whole Foods to get some of my coconut products, right? This is just something that, like, hey, we need to bring this stuff into our community for us. And I feel like when you're outside the community, you can't fight for the community the same. I hear the gunshots, the helicopters, I see the dead bodies on the streets. That's how you fight the battle. You can't fight it from an office or, from a home, 500,000 miles away. So being on, you know, having boots on ground and seeing the kids and talking with them, I feel like that's the only way to get maximum change.
You touched on it very briefly, just about the NFL coming to Inglewood. Can you talk about SoFi Stadium, uh, the $5 billion beautiful state of the art stadium that Stan Kroenke built, that the Rams and Chargers are playing in. Unfortunately, without the situation we're in, where there's no fans there, but just what that means for the community, and once the second phase of it is built with retail and apartments, hotels, just a full-fledged, like LA Live times about 5. What is that going to be like for the community?
Well, it's definitely going to be great. One thing that it does is it increases wealth for homeowners. We've averaged a 7.25% increase in home value. And I think from the perspective of opportunity, that's going to be big, where you can't create opportunity in an opportunity desert. And so you need opportunity to come. And naturally, it's two-sided. One is, how do we as citizens benefit and maximize what's coming into our city? But it's also, how do we remain in our city and not get pushed out, right? And when you go to, developing skills and developing entrepreneurship skills and developing business and, ecosystems, then you give people a better opportunity to benefit from the local economic impact, as opposed to, rents going up and different things like that. And good thing the city and the citizens have fought for rent control, different things like that. And I feel like it's a great opportunity for the city. And just knowing firsthand the dilapidation that ensues once the sports leave. I grew up in Inglewood post the Forum and went to LA Live, and the fact that they're bringing that back, I'm excited to be back home and for home to be turning into a sports and entertainment hub.
Yeah, and kind of some of those things you say you have to go out of the city to get, there'll be a lot of those things will be there, which will be great for the community.
Exactly.
One thing unrelated to football and what you're doing now is you actually mentioned, you threw out Twitter. One of the best sports shows on TV is Good Morning Football, which airs every morning on the NFL Network, and one of our announcers, Peter Schrager, is also on that. You are, I would say, unofficially, if not officially, their biggest fan. You're tweeting at them constantly, and they love you. And just walk through how that kind of came about, and yeah, how you started spending your mornings with Kay, Kyle, Nate, and Peter.
I'm an early bird. I believe in biphasic sleeping, so not just sleeping in 8 hours. So I wake up at between 2 and 5 o'clock pretty much every day. And football is what I love. And Nate, obviously, he's a mentor to me. He played with my cousin, Keenan Howery, who was at Oregon. And so having Nate on there and seeing Nate in Seattle and in Detroit, lay the seeds for, his media career. And then I did some work with Kyle Brandt, on the show, and he was doing some executive producing work there. So I have, experience with him. And, to have those two guys with Shregs and Kay, it makes a great team. And it's a younger show that really speaks to what the league is today, right? You have a lot of announcers and a lot of pundits and personalities that remember the old NFL, right? Remember how it used to be. And of course, it's changed. But Good Morning Football, whether it's Angry Run, whether, they're dressing up, the different specials where they have players call in, it's really an authentic, natural show that I feel does the best at bringing the fans inside of the game. And first and foremost, I'm a fan of the NFL. I love football and love the game. And, watching them, for me, I rather watch Good Morning Football every day than watch the actual games on Sunday. I get so much more and just so much depth, but waking up with them has been among the greatest treats, from a sports perspective.
That's awesome to hear. We're going to open it up now to some questions for our last few minutes. We have our first question comes from our very own Susie Lee, who asks, just talk about your transition from playing in the NFL to, normal pedestrian life. How was that process?
Brutal, very brutal. Was mentally hospitalized twice, had two attempted suicides to some degree, not like, uh, a full attempt to where I had to be resuscitated, but I was definitely there. Went through not getting opportunities to coach at my high school, which was depressing. But undoubtedly, the mental transition is the hardest, going from competing every day on something specific and being thrown out into the world and still having that competitive spirit, but it not being that competitive environment is pretty tough. But my family, my friends, God, devoting my life more to spirituality has really helped me out a lot. But the transition is brutal. And I felt that I was prepared for it. But everybody is different, and the circumstances of retirement are different. But, luckily the NFL has great resources. Even USC has great resources. I've worked with them with my issues. But the transition itself can be difficult, but once you get out of that, you really start to see all the beauty of it. And I feel much more mature, thankful and grateful even that I went through, the mental health episodes through the transition.
If you have any questions in the chat at the bottom of the screen, feel free to send them my way. Mike Gottlieb asking, he too is read and is a big believer in the inner game of tennis. Can you talk a little bit about how the approach has helped kept you calm through adversity in your life?
Yeah, so The Inner Game of Tennis is really a cool book in the sense that it creates a difference between the body and the mind. And, when we practice different things, we train the body to do it, and the mind is the observer. And it uses an example of a cat. When a cat is hunting a bird, he's not in his mind thinking, well, if this bird does this, then I'm going to do that. If he goes there, I'm going to, no, he's ready. And once that bird moves, he does what he needs to do to get the bird, right? There's no thought because he's trained to do it. And for me, in understanding stressful situations, the 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 stressful situations in life, how they get you to not trust your training and get you to insert your thoughts into it, and how that intercedes and creates this tension that creates confusion. And so as I've moved away from football and I see that I'm still competing with myself, I still have to monitor my inner voice that wants to overcome what I've trained my body to do or trained the skills to do. And, that voice comes up, whether it's fight or flight, right? You can calm that voice down as well. Say, hey, no, this is this. Let me take a step back, find a different level of awareness, right? And not react and panic, because you know that those reactions and attachment to the mind, as opposed to, the self and the heart, it leads to micro mistakes. And then with tennis, the thought is you don't swing as fluidly. For me in football, was pressing too much and wanting to be too successful, right? And just have to relax and take things as they come.
I believe we have a question for Chip Agers. Chip, one of our founders, and actually the person that got me involved in the group.
First of all, thank you, Jacob, for setting this up and introducing our group to Lawrence Jackson. Lawrence, a friend who's associated with our group named Dr. John Meyer couldn't be here today, but wanted to make sure that I gave you a shout out. So do you know Dr. John?
John is one of my favorite people. He's been instrumental in not only my recovery, from my ankle injuries, but in helping me get an understanding of my body that in and of itself is allowing me to help the athletes and the student athletes that I'm working with. He's incredible. The information that athletes need to learn about their bodies, it's a lot, but with people like John, and I consider myself a disciple of John, trigger point, stretching, loosening up the hips, all of these things that athletes need to know, that's part of performance. And John has played a critical role in helping me understand the recovery side of performance.
Well, he certainly said to say hello. Unfortunately, you can imagine that he just got out of the bubble, so he's been working away, but wanted to make sure I said hi. I also want to thank you for being a great Trojan person. I mean, we certainly watched you play football and an incredible football career. You're remarkable. You have clear communication with Jacob and sharing your story with us. I mean, WSA is all about providing economically disadvantaged kids those opportunities to play sports. So I want to ask you the question. You never have enough funding. You know that. Okay. So the question I have for you is, how do you get kids to engage and recognize the opportunity that people are trying to give them like you did in today's world? And then I'll go on mute. Again, fight on, and thank you very much.
Fight on. I think that with kids want to be better. Kids want to have authentic hope. A lot of kids today have false hope, in the sense of you see something, but you don't see a path to get there, right? And when a lot of the disadvantaged athletes and student athletes see individuals like themselves come back and show what opportunities have been presented, not from just sport, but from character development, right? Kids want to make better choices. The pathway to making better choices is to have something in front of you that can improve your life. When you have kids that know that, hey, I'm playing sports or I'm going to this school, and if I'm really good or somebody, I will have an opportunity to go out and get a chance to go to college. When you do that, the kids have a natural receptivity to it. They don't want to not be without any resources, but they want the resources to come from somebody who understands their struggle to help navigate the resources that come in. So I think that having the experience of making it, to the NFL first round, the way that all the kids want to, it's an opportunity for me to help them see the greater opportunities that sports, have to offer. Even just getting a degree, the value of a degree for your generational, generational opportunity is tremendous. And for me, that's the main goal, is letting kids know that they can get educated and they can redefine their future.
We have a question from Catherine Shirley. Please tell us a little bit about your reading. What are you up to? What are you reading currently?
Say that again, the last part.
What are you reading currently?
So I'm reading Justinian's Fleet. It's a book about the plague in Rome and how plagues can redefine and reset society. And for America, I feel that the plague or coronavirus is really doing a number on us economically, socially, in many ways, and getting an understanding of Rome and the plague in Rome and how it shaped Rome going forward. I think that's important to understand moving forward with COVID, and also reading the 8 pillars of Greek wisdom, where with the Greeks, they had a beautiful philosophy on sport where the best part of sport is the third level of sport that coincides with the third level of self, where you're competing with yourself to have the benefits of overcoming various odds. And so those 2 books have been really meaningful. And I have probably 10 or 15 books that I have to get to, but those are the 2 situationally that I feel are appealing. But finding a way to navigate COVID and navigate the social, I feel are important. And we're all going to have to come together if we want to be the country that we say we are, the United States, and really come out of this together. And so we need people on both sides of politics. We need people from all sides of races and nationalities to come together with ideas and understanding. And I feel Justinian's Flea is one of the best books that I can read, for right now.
Question from Nick Egan. Tell us about your love of music, and in particular, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, music is a complementary activity to sport, right? Whether it's, getting hyped for a game, winding down after a game, training, music frees the soul. And I feel that flow, the state of flow, is really about being centered in yourself. And with Jimi Hendrix is revolutionary. He's the equivalent of like a Michael Vick, right? Where you've seen people run, you've seen Warren Moon. So it's not, a black quarterback isn't, out of this world. You've seen Randall Cunningham, but to see Michael Vick is to see something completely new. And, Jimi Hendrix always reminds me of the opportunity to break outside of the status quo. Jimi Hendrix is among the greatest, if not the greatest guitarist ever. And to have such an indelible impact on rock and roll, having to leave America, then come back to be embraced with Woodstock and everything, is just a testament on, the idea that he says, with the power of soul, anything is possible. Anything. And to have somebody play the guitar flipped with their left hand is brilliant. And the fact that he served briefly in the military, in the army, and refused to really talk bad about the army despite his agreement or disagreement with the wars, was very profound. But Jimi Hendrix is a spirit that not only is one of independence, but I think we all can gain inspiration from what individuals can do when they fully dive into what they feel in their heart.
So 2 cool things about Jimi Hendrix. Obviously, in Seattle, you probably did a little exploring. Oh, wait, who's that? Lawrence, is that an old teammate of yours?
Yes, it is. What's going on, Matt?
Welcome,
Dude,
Matt.
I'm in the car. I'm being a dad. What's going on?
Nothing much. Getting ready to hop off and cook dinner and be a dad.
When was the last time you guys saw each other or talked to each other?
Want to say a little bit before COVID at a basketball game. I think, was it UCLA versus SC?
Yeah, it might have been that, or Arizona. It was one of those games.
Arizona
State.
Yeah.
Matt, just quickly, Lawrence has told us a little bit about his journey, but just talk about what he was like as a teammate.
LoJack? Oh, Lawrence was the best, man. I was so fortunate to play with so many great teammates, man, just on and off the field. And Lawrence was Obviously a great player for us and had a huge impact for all of those teams, but just probably an even nicer guy off the field, ultimate teammate, always kind of like head up in the clouds as far as like philosophy. I always said that about you, LoJack, is like the philosophy and just the way he thought about things and all that. It was so unique, you know, it was so different, in a good way. So I think, and again, we had some of the best memories and times together, on those teams, and Lawrence was a huge part of that. And I know he's doing great things now. So it's always cool to reconnect with our former Trojans.
And Lawrence, what was Matt like as obviously the quarterback of the teams that went 37-2 and a leader, but what was Matt like as a teammate?
So the visual that we have of Matt as fans, calm, collected, being able to stand in any situation. I saw that when I first got there, right? He walked in some shorts, some chucks, had a Dodgers hat on and a white t-shirt. And I'm like, who is this special teams guy right here? I thought he was a kicker or something. They're like, oh no, like, and then I saw him play. And for me, you don't, as a defensive lineman, of course, hitting the quarterback, you know how tough quarterbacks are. And we had a great offensive line. And, so early on with Matt, we all saw, replacing Carson Palmer and different things like that. But for me, Matt won me over the Arizona State game where he very well should have been knocked out the game. And he came back, didn't make a fuss about it, went out there, did his thing and won the game. And the best example of who Matt is as a person and a player is the 4th and 9 versus Notre Dame. I swear to you, the fact that he even audibled, I didn't even know that there was an audible on that play. I'm like, okay, like, I trust him. This is about to be it. But I don't think that people understand the tension, the intensity, the energy of that moment, and how much heart and courage you have to make that check, and to have our quarterback do that, and to have, and the thing that I love about Matt, he was great to everybody. It's very rare that you have guys on the team who, are Heisman candidates, Heisman hopefuls, All-Americans, this and this and that and that, who are approachable and everything like that. And I feel that Matt's personality was a big part of our personality as a team. You put a quarterback like Matt with a coach like Coach Carroll together, and with that energy, you play for the coach and you play for the quarterback. And so when Matt, comes back into a game, or when he gets drilled or makes a great pass, as a defense, we're like, yo, let's go get the ball back so we can see those guys play again. And it was just a great opportunity to see him win the competition and mature and grow into everything that we thought, that he was early on, and for him to get that respect.
Matt,
I think
just for the group, Matt, to echo those sentiments, Matt is about as easygoing, as generous a human being as there is, and I'm lucky enough to work with him. As good a father as anybody I know, and just an example of him juggling his schedule and just popping in to say hi to Lawrence tells you the kind of guy he is.
Well, first of all, you're explaining. Gosh, I look back at pictures and I see the white T-shirt, Lawrence with ducks, and my terrible long hair. I just got a haircut today. It's a lot shorter. I'm in a tank top, which is usually what I live in. So not much has changed in the last 15 years. But I appreciate the kind words, man. It was an honor to be quarterback for those teams at USC and to play with guys like you. And it's always so cool to reconnect and just see what everyone's up to, post football life. And but I'll tell you what, man, that was and for everyone that's on, just those were some of the greatest years to be a Trojan and to be a part of something special. And I know I probably speak for LoJack, but just it was such an honor to be a part of those teams. And Jake, I appreciate you having me on, man. Sorry I'm a little late. I was called to baby duty, and now I'm actually have the teenage duty right here next to me. So
Hi, Cole.
hi.
Well, we'll let Matt go. Just a quick plug while Matt's here. We have this Saturday, Matt and our whole cast of Big Noon Kickoff will be in Columbus for Nebraska, Ohio State. 7 a.m. We're on Pacific time. Game starts at 9 a.m. And then even more important to Trojan fans, November 7th, USC's opener, 7 a.m. at the Coliseum, bright and early, right? Coffee, mimosas, Bloody Marys, you name it.
Hey, we'll have everything on set. There you go.
Yeah, and the game, we're on from 7 to 9 a.m. and then the game actually against Arizona State kicks off at 9 a.m. Early game at the Coliseum. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Cole.
All right, guys. Take care. Fight on, everybody.
Fight on, man. Have a good one.
There's a quick question. Will tailgating be allowed? There's no fans allowed at the game, Mike Gottlieb. So there will not be tailgates at the USC game, but the cast will be there. So 7 a.m. on November 7th to watch the Trojan opener. Any other final words, Lawrence, you want to leave the group with? Anything to think about?
Yeah, just the idea of knowing we are, as individuals, the key to change. Everyone on this call can do something to make society better. Everybody on this call has an individual gift that they can share with the world. Life is not about just making money. Life is about sharing your gift so that other people can be inspired and live. So take the jacket, offer your gifts, and expose it to the world so people can reap what you've sown into others.
Awesome. Thank you, Lawrence. It was having watched you as a player and becoming as a big fan, it's even better to have become got to know you and become friends outside of the world. You're a very interesting person and make us all think. And I really, really appreciate what you do and what your values are. And they're so aligned with WSA's mission. So it makes all the sense in the world. We really appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you inviting me on, and I look forward to collaborating with WSA and fighting on to making youth sports possible.
Thank you. So as we said at the top, November 5th is the big yearly gala this year. Of course, in these interesting times, it will be a live stream event. Go to www.westcoastsports.org for details. Charles Barkley, the honoree that night, and the special guests. And so obviously that'll make it fun and unpredictable. We appreciate you, Lawrence, and thanks to everybody that joined, and we hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Hey, and I'll
Thanks,
just
everyone. Fight on.
quick wrap up. Jacob and Lawrence, thank you so much. Lawrence, I can't tell how impressed we are with you and what you're doing, and your mission aligns with the mission of WSA. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, Susie Lee. Susie's our unsung hero, who's the behind the scenes person.
She's doing all the work.
All the stuff up. She does all the work. Thank you, Susie. We look forward to seeing everyone November 5th. And thank you again, Lawrence, Jacob, and look forward to seeing everyone soon. Fight on.
Thank you. Good night, LoJack.
Good night. Have a great night.